so if it's real or fake. Golden Greek told us the giant goon Dickov, El Toro, the Grunt Brothers too. The wild Samoans got something crazy going. They're gonna be going after you. Wrestling tonight. Everything is bigger than life.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Tonight. I am your humble hardcore host, Mad Dog Butch. Joining me as always, I should say, the JC the Ice Baby to my Wolfie D, Brace Beemer.
Yeah.
Now,
have a good night, everyone. Let's go. That was good enough for me. I'm just kidding.
Now, obviously, it is WrestleMania season. And on one of our previous podcasts, we covered WrestleMania 1.
Is that 2 weeks from now, WrestleMania?
Don't ask me.
Yeah,
I believe so. I think so. I think, because I think the next Raw is like the go home Raw before it. So I think so. So today we are going to be talking about, in sequential order, WrestleMania 2. WrestleMania 2 took place on Monday, April 7th, 1986, back when they used to do it during the week.
I think that was the only one they did on Monday. This was the exception.
Was it? I know that they did it before. I mean, later.
Oh, they did?
Well, remember they did Tuesday in Texas and stuff like that.
Oh, but okay, I thought you were talking just
I'd have to check into that.
I remember I did read that this is the only WrestleMania they did that
Do you know
wasn't on
why?
Sunday.
Do you know why they did it on a Monday?
I have no idea. If I had to hazard a guess, go ahead.
I would have to check on WrestleMania 1, though, because I don't think that was a Sunday either.
Huh.
That might have been. I should have looked that up last time.
Yeah,
but,
I believe it was.
But I don't think, because I don't think they started doing it on Sundays till later on.
It's likely building availability for the reason on Monday. That would be my guess. But maybe we'll take that as a homework assignment to go figure out.
Yeah, well, we'll have to, because was WrestleMania 3 on a Sunday? Or was that,
was on a Sunday.
Was that a Saturday?
That was Sunday.
All right. Now, this... I'm assuming they were trying to figure out a way to top WrestleMania 1 with this one. So their decision was to break it up into, besides the laundry list of celebrities that they added to this one.
B-list celebrities,
they also,
most of them.
Well, yeah. But they decided to hold it in 3 different arenas. So basically, they did one from New York, they did it from Chicago, and they did it from LA. So basically, each city had 4 matches, and then you could watch the other matches on closed circuit TV or whatever that you would watch in the arena.
Interesting concept for those guys.
It was.
Since NWA tried it, well, they were successful at it for a couple pay-per-views prior to that.
Closed circuit. That's right.
You know, the Starcades did closed circuit at multiple locations, so... Yeah,
that's right. I forgot about that. So, it looked like they were just throwing a lot at the wall this time. So let's get into it. They start right off in New York, which is at the Nassau County Coliseum and not Madison Square Garden. Starting off with Vince McMahon, he introduces his color commentator co-host as the number 1 actress at the time, Miss Susan St. James.
Terrible.
She was on, I remember on Kate and Alley. I'm assuming she was on something else.
I don't even know that show. Not that I
at some point. But, I don't know. That show may have been big at the time. There was 3 channels. I don't know. But,
I was trying to remember if I ever saw anything that she was in, and I'm not, a big, huge TV movie guy anyway, but I couldn't think of anything. I'm like, who is this?
I know she was in some stuff. That's the only thing that I could come up with was Kate and Alley.
Yeah.
And I'm
Where's
sure
Joe Johnson when you need him?
And I'm sure that is what was going on at the time. Well, actually, what was going on was she was dating Dick Ebersol.
Oh, really?
The head of NBC at the time.
Head of NBC Sports. Yeah.
So they had just worked the deal out, probably not too much longer before that, with the Saturday night's main event deal. So that is where
nice job. Nice investigative work there.
That is where that's coming from.
Yes. I wouldn't have had a clue.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. That's got to be the reason why.
And she was terrible.
She was bad. We'll talk about the 3 different ones that they had and which one was the best as far as the celebrity color commentators that they had at each location. Yeah. We get Ray Charles. Vince McMahon introduces Ray Charles, and he does a nice version of America the Beautiful.
Yeah, it was great.
It was.
Ray Charles. That guy's got talent.
He does. Or did. And then we go to Mean Gene, and he sends it to the back to, well, you know what? I'm just going to play it. We don't have a whole lot of time to play clips, but I definitely want to play this one. So
let's roll.
Stand by and check this one out.
Technical difficulties at the moment.
Just a second here.
Gene Okerlund here at the Rosemont Horizon in suburban Chicago, Illinois, where later on you're going to be seeing a gigantic 20-man over-the-top rope battle royal. You can cut the electricity in the air with a knife. It is something else. Right now, I understand, back in New York at the Nassau County Coliseum, Roddy Piper is psyching up for his boxing match.
He's a prospect. I think of the heavyweights out there today, this is the best prospect going. He's trained diligently. He's in real good shape. Heavyweights, one punch and it's all over. Tonight, he's in shape and he's going to do his job. Right, Roddy?
I'm cute. I grew my hair long. That way, during the fight tonight, you can tell the difference between me and T. I figured some of you folks out there may get a little confused. I have got the absolute best coach in the entire world to train me. I've been down with Biggs training, with Spinks training. He went and got Smoking Joe Fraser in his corner. Are you ribbing me? He threw a medicine ball at my belly. Didn't move an inch. I'm down to 219 pounds in 30 minutes. You see, talk's cheap. So you say, Roddy, well, you're sitting there talking. I say this to you. I say, if Mr. T can knock me out in this fight right here, I would not only quit professional boxing, I would quit and retire professional wrestling, I would quit tiddlywinks, I would quit dating girls. I'd stick with you. I would quit it all. I right now say, if he can knock me out, I retire, and I'm going to stick my head out there round after round after round and put it out there because as pretty as it is, he's going to shoot some punches. I'm going to be moving like that, just like Coach taught me. You're going to shoot some more, I'm going to be moving like that. And another thing, you know, Mr. T, I know you're a smart aleck, you come out with the kilt, but let me tell you something. Never will I shave my hair like an Indian and paint myself black. Too-hoo.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Hot Rod, never will I shave my hair like an Indian and paint myself black. Well, he painted himself black, didn't he?
Well, he didn't lie because he painted himself half black.
Yeah, that's true.
When he fought Bad News Brown a couple of WrestleManias later.
Yeah.
But, man, just classic Roddy Piper there.
Yeah.
Just classic heel Piper. So much better than when he turned babyface. Not even a comparison.
I think he probably knocked himself out of my top 10 by turning babyface, you know?
Yeah. I mean, he definitely would not be in my top 10 in the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the reasons why I started watching it in the 80s. But
Yeah.
so with Piper in that interview was Lou Duva, who was a boxing trainer, and Cowboy Bob Orton. And I was thinking about this earlier. Cowboy Bob Orton probably got 2 fat WrestleMania checks for basically doing not a whole lot.
Sitting at ringside,
he had
my arm.
He had WrestleMania 1 as the second in the main event to Piper and Orndorff. And then he's the second to Piper versus Mr. T in the boxing match at WrestleMania 2.
And it's too bad. The first one because he's such a good performer in the ring, you know?
He was, yeah. So I'm thinking that WrestleMania 3 was the only one that he wrestled in, and he was in the opener against him and Morocco against
probably
Can-Am
right.
Connection.
Yeah.
Which is basically a glorified squash, but whatever.
Yeah.
But so then
Cowboy Bob Orton, I'm going to hit you with my cast.
So then we get into our first match, which is the Magnificent Morocco with Mr. Fuji against Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
First time they ever met, according to Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that's true. Is that true?
I doubt
I didn't
it.
look into it.
Yeah.
I didn't look into that, but
Me
I
neither.
thought that
thought
was
it's
kind
too
of
late
odd.
in the game.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. They should have, or they could have, actually promoted this as the Battle of the Pile Drive.
Yeah,
Because
really.
Morocco actually did the Tombstone Pile Driver years
Right.
before Undertaker did. And then, of course, Paul Orndorff was famous for his pile driver.
Yeah.
One thing that was kind of weird was the match started and they played the promos for those guys over the match.
Yeah, while the match was
Which-
going.
Yeah, while the match was going, I
With
thought that
no
was kind of
box
weird.
in the corner.
Yeah,
just
no
the
box,
audio.
just like overplayed it, But
I noted that too.
so I mean,
The production values, and honestly, like through this whole, I don't care, but the production values weren't what they are today, and even a couple years later, this was a big chore to get 3 different locations live and have the production and everything going flawlessly. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
commend them for trying that. I mean, that's
Right.
huge.
Oh no, I'm not faulting him for it
Oh,
at
me
all.
neither. Yeah.
But this match ends in a double countout, and it almost seems like it was just a way to get both of these guys on the show.
Yeah, it was 4 minutes and 10 seconds long.
Yeah. I mean, Orndorff started out kind of hot doing like some arm drags, and then he worked on the arm, and then next thing you know, they go over the top rope, and then they brawl a little bit, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't think the crowd really cared for the double count out either. I mean, they weren't. It was one of the times where you can hear the crowd boo, and they weren't booing because of the decision. They were booing because it was a ripoff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, basically, you got 3 hours to get 12 matches in.
Right.
You got pretty much the Chicago show had 2 main events.
Yeah.
And then other ones had matches that needed to go longer than the main event too.
Yeah.
So like the undercard matches needed to be relatively quick, and
I'm glad they were.
and we'll see that later on too. Yeah, they didn't really need to. They all did their job. I'm sure they all needed what they all did what they needed to do. I'm sure, but
And our great color commentator Susan St. James had a nice line in this one. They're the match is like a slow Chinese torture. Gee, thanks.
I didn't. If I did catch that, I didn't note it, but whatever.
And one of the things I noted, I like the look of the arena, because it was Nassau Coliseum. Like I watched used to watch like hockey games there, and it's like the old barn or whatever. And
Yeah.
it just had that dark old school feel. It looked different than the slick production now, and it looked different than the different arenas that they had on this show.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that's one of my major complaints, and I think that the crowd would be into it more if they still turned the house lights down like they used to.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I mean, it's been a long time really since that's happened.
Which is
But what?
before they had especially in the South, like people that really did their wrestling well, even in New York, WWF at times they'd have to turn the house lights off to keep people from rioting.
Yeah,
So it's
Yeah.
just it's a different day.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you gotta-
exactly
They're so boring. They got to wake the crowd up somehow, and that's hard to do.
right.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not the crowd's fault.
No. All right, so next we get a promo with Mr. T, Smoking Joe Frazier, and the recently haircutted Haiti Kid. Roddy Piper and Bob Orton had him on Piper's Pit and gave him a Mr. T type haircut.
Gave him a mohawk. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Not a bad promo for Mr. T, really.
No, you know what? I thought it was pretty good for him.
Yeah, I
Actually.
did too. I
Yeah.
did too. So from there we get match number 2, which is Randy Macho Man Savage with Elizabeth against George the Animal Steele. Not a bad match. One thing that I always thought was interesting was, during this period they're bringing in all these younger new guys. I thought for sure that at one point they were going to start using George Steele as a jobber, or a glorified jobber.
Yeah.
Like, but they never really did.
Because he did at times, though.
I mean, there was times where he would like lose a match relatively quick. I mean, like, I think he feuded with One Man Gang at one point, and got gang over. But for the most part, he never really got squashed.
Yeah, really.
Well,
he kept the part-time deal too, so that kind of helped him out, where he wasn't around all the time either.
Yeah. And see, that's another thing. I always wondered, like, I mean, the reports are now that Steele, and if anybody doesn't know, his real name is Jim Myers, and he was a teacher and football coach at Madison Heights. They just recently named their football field after him.
Oh, really?
Arena.
Oh, that's cool. That'd be cool for his family too.
Yeah, I mean, he passed away a couple years ago, so it was actually before he passed away. So he was able to attend it. So it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. Could be longer ago, but either way, that's like the
Jim Myers
Jim
field.
Myers, yeah,
like the Pete Fusey field in Mount Morris.
But so Randy Savage, I mean, okay match. I mean, about what you would expect from these guys. But
Yeah, really.
It seemed like they were kind of laying in some pretty heavy shots.
Yeah.
And eventually Savage does the old rope feet on the rope job and pins George the Animal Steele.
Yeah, it kind of was what it was, but it was good enough. 5 minutes. Those guys really couldn't go that much longer than that, given.
No, and they had a little bit of a feud going. I mean, actually, that feud pretty much continued all the way till WrestleMania 3 because George Steele seconded Ricky Steamboat, throws Savage off the top rope, and kind of costs him the belt.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll cover that one in the future
we will
sometime.
Yeah, definitely, especially since you and I were there.
But really, I mean, we can see how far out the WWF booking was at that time, because a lot of it, everything I've heard from anybody who's ever worked there is, their main angles, they try and go a year out. They have been forever.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, right.
And then everything else can be last minute or 6 months or whatever,
Yeah. Then we move on to an interview that Mean Gene conducts between Bill Fralick and Big John Studd.
Nice job by Studd on this interview.
Oh, yeah. He ends up popping a football. But but
awesome.
now I remember like
it was a college football. I had like the like the half stripe around it.
Oh, I didn't notice that. But Bill Fralick was, I believe, the rookie of the year the year before.
Yeah.
And he played for the Atlanta Falcons. And he was one guy that they always said that was going to pursue a career in wrestling when he was done. He also passed away, I think, last year or the year before. But they did bring him back years later for the Yokozuna Body Slam Challenge, and he almost got Yoko up. He was like one of the closest guys.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about
get
that.
Him up. Yeah.
Strong guy. And you know what? I mean, I had it written down for later, but let's just hit it now. Now, imagine this today in NFL Rookie of the Year, the next year going and getting to a wrestling ring.
Oh, I know.
I mean, there's no way that would happen.
Right.
And a lot of it is money because at this time it was probably a nice payoff for an NFL player, to be able to get in this battle royal because they weren't making the money in the NFL that they're making now. But today, forget about it.
Right, exactly. Well, any of those guys that were still playing, I don't think they would allow any of those guys to do it. But so then that leads us to match number 3, which I was gonna call it a squash. In my memory, it was more of a squash, but it really wasn't.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, holy crap.
And it was George Wells versus Jake the Snake Roberts, who had recently joined WWF. He hadn't been in there very long. But George Wells got a lot more offense than I remembered.
Yeah.
Pretty much he
dominated most of the
dominated the whole thing. Jake the Snake, I think, threw him out at one, raked the eyes, threw him out, gave him a knee lift, and gave him the DDT, and that was it. But up until that point, George Wells was kind of dominating.
Yeah, I made that note too. Like Roberts gave a lot in that match.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
George Wells was pretty good, and he had gained some weight here. I used to like watching him on Primetime. I used to love that Primetime wrestling show. That was really the only WWF show that I really, really liked.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you could get Wells in there against somebody else, and you could see what the guy could do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I always liked watching George Wells perform. After, I don't think he was around too much longer in WWF.
Yeah,
he went to World Class after this and became Master G and had like more success in Texas than he did in WWF. But I don't think he could cut a promo. I think that was probably the issue with him. But what I will say this, when I was watching it, I was disappointed that LJN never made a George Wells figure.
Yeah, really.
He probably would have done very well in my league.
Did you notice like how heavy George Wells looked on that? I mean, we're talking about George Wells and Jake the Snake's the other guy, but if you want to hear Jake the Snake, just go out and type his name in the internet gimmick and, give George Wells some love here. And as I talk about his weight, but did you notice how big? I'm like, I thought he was in better shape than that.
Yeah. Well, I think he was up until near that time.
I noticed like during the commentary, Vince McMahon says, well, George Wells gained 20 or 30 pounds in preparation for this matchup. And I just thought that was kind of funny that, I noticed that. And then obviously McMahon in the WWF was noticing the weight gain too.
Well, that's what they used to always do. That's what Bill Watts used to say about Junkyard Dog before he made the jump to WWF 2, because he was always that was the old thing, bulking up for competition.
Yeah, that's right. And the match was only 3 minutes 15 seconds long, but it was good for what it was. Jake the Snake with the DDT at the end, and they pulled the snake out and tried to make it look like Jake the Snake was using the python to choke out George Wells, and he had the foam.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A la Giant Tim. Had the foam coming from his mouth.
Yep.
They did a good job with it. It could have looked a lot worse.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a good way to introduce Jake the Snake and get him over big time. I mean, he was already getting, he would have got over with that gimmick anyway, putting the snake on people. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know.
No matter what. But
because really, like my match, I wrote down, I wrote Jake the Snake, and then a couple punches, knee lift, DDT, snake, and pretty much that's all he needed.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So then from there, we get a video recap of the Roddy Piper and Mr. T feud.
I was disappointed in that recap.
That led us up to, you're right, there was a glaring omission.
Yeah.
And that was, excuse me. First of all, they pretty much set up this whole thing on Saturday Night's Main Event. Just kind of like out of the blue, or maybe they had set it up on a weekend show. I don't remember, but just kind of out of the blue, they started calling Bob Orton boxing Bob Orton and giving him a boxing gimmick. So on Saturday Night's Main Event, he boxed Mr. T. That ended up with him and Piper whipping Mr. T.
Yeah.
Which gave us the classic line from Jesse Ventura that it looks like Roots 2, McMahon. And they cut that part out of the recap.
Yeah, I mean, I could see where they would get some calls thinking that's pretty heavy. Some of the...
Yeah, but back in that era?
I know. I mean, it was heat. I mean, they did a lot worse than that, but that's what I was wanting to see, because that's really what got all the heat. It did. Was the whipping, and then...
Right. And then that's what led to the match with Piper and T at this WrestleMania. A side note, and I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast, I don't remember, but after the match, the boxing match with Bob Orton and Mr. T, Mr. T was in the back sucking on an oxygen tank, totally blown up. And Bob Orton walks by, and Mr. T's like, hey, you need some of this, buddy? And Bob Orton holds up a cigarette and a can of beer, and he's like, no, I'm good. But anyway, so then actually we go to L.A. after this, and get an interview with Hulk Hogan and Jesse Ventura.
Are we covering the boxing match now, or are we going to the interview first? I kind of got lost. I'm
just going
in order
in the order of what happened.
Okay, so the interview came next.
So the interview was next for whatever reason they go to this interview.
Good. I just got lost. My fault.
Yeah. No. Basically, Hogan. I guess it was just so Hogan could comment on Mr. T, his buddy, being in this match. It really made no sense to jump to this, but it did jump around quite a bit.
Getting some of the Hulk Hogan deodorant sprayed on him, make him smell good.
Right. Yeah. Giving him some of the rub, but. So then we get Howard Finkel in the ring, who does the intros. We get Joan Rivers as the guest ring announcer. We get judges Daryl Dawkins, Cab Calloway, G. Gordon Liddy. And then we get the biggest pop out of anybody just about was Herb, the Burger King man, who was the guest timekeeper.
I'm glad you wrote these guys down. I started to, and I'm like, my hand's gonna start hurting. Right, all these.
Oh, I know. I got like
celebrities.
3 pages. But if anybody doesn't know who Herb was, it was like a Burger King campaign where Herb was like the only man back in 1986 who had never had a Burger King Whopper. So it was this long running thing. But anyway,
And that was the New York crowd that popped for that one.
yeah, they did.
Nice.
They did. So then we get match number 4, which is the boxing match between Roddy Piper and Mr. T. Not a whole lot. I mean, it's a boxing match. They did what they could do, I guess. Now, I did want to ask you about this, though. I've seen a little bit of people, talking about it, but I don't necessarily remember. Like, T goes down in round 2.
Yeah.
And I mean, it looked like it looked almost, not that the punch was legit, but it looked like he might have been really blown up.
Because he went down twice before.
Yeah, he went down like during the match and then during the round. And then when the round was over, he like kind of went down on his hands and knees again. So it almost looked like he was just really blown up, but I don't know. I'd never really heard that.
I thought, because that was, watching that, I was already thinking, man, Piper's doing a wonderful job in this match for what it was. I thought Piper was absolutely awesome.
Well, we should point this out. Roddy Piper actually was a Golden Gloves boxer,
right, exactly,
in his younger years.
Yeah, and when T went down, I thought that was well done. I looked at it like T just got hit from an awkward position because they were kind of laying the shots in at, they weren't going full bore, but some of those when they were exposed, because Piper knows how to throw a punch, right? I just thought that maybe he got hit at an awkward position.
It might have been.
And then went down, but I don't think he was, I don't think that was like not planned I don't think he was gassed or anything at that point because sure, he's suck and win, but not gassed.
Okay.
Because look at what they did later on.
Well, yeah, match, he did go 2 more rounds.
And if you're gassed, you're not going to go to the corner for a couple
another
minutes.
round and a half, I should say.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a story behind this, but at one point he throws Piper into the corner, kind of does a phantom punch. Piper goes outside of the ring, and then Piper ends up chucking his stool at T before I think the beginning of the 3rd or the 4th round. But I think there was a story there. I think Piper was upset that he fanned that punch or something. I remember Piper talking about something that had happened during that period.
Because Piper wasn't getting along with T for the longest time anyway, right?
But it was something with that punch. It was something with that phantom punch.
He was supposed to hit it and Piper was mad.
I think so, yeah, because I think Piper thought it ended up. I think Piper thought it looked a lot worse than it actually did, which it didn't really look that bad. I mean, you can tell by looking at it, but because
that's hard to believe that that I could see Piper throwing the chair just improvising, but I don't think he would throw it because of something that T did. I don't know. That just at that stage that might not
have been part of it, but I know that
maybe later on he was.
But I know that there was something with that punch that he went outside of the ring with. I'll have to look that up later. I should have looked it up.
It just looked like he improvised, pulled like a Terry Funk or something, and forgot he was in with Mr. T and not Terry Funk.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably supposed to throw the stool, and maybe T didn't get out of the way too. I mean, it could be anything. But so Piper ends up pushing the referee and body slamming Mr. T in the 4th round, which gets Piper obviously disqualified and gives the victory to Mr. T. Turns into a big melee at the end.
I just thought that I thought they did a good job. I mean, it looked that was probably the best. I can't believe I'm saying it with Mr. T in it. The best professional wrestling boxing match that I've seen. Mm-hmm. And
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Hell, it looked better than the WWF free for all or whatever brawl for all.
Oh, the brawl for all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It actually looked more like a boxing match
Yeah.
than those guys. I mean, but that probably goes back
And
to,
credit-
I don't know if Mr. T had boxing experience, but we know that Piper did.
Credit Mr. T as well, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I give him credit for it.
Yeah.
So then from there, we move on to the Chicago Rosemont Horizon.
Well, give me your number one out of, I didn't even think of this. What's your number one from the Nassau Coliseum matches? What was the best one on that?
Let's see. I'd have to say it would have to be the boxing match, probably.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean, just the other ones were just, nothing spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, they did what they had to do, but they just weren't anything that great.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. We're just, so then we move on
We're
to
just shooting the breeze here.
Chicago Rosemont Horizon. We start off with Gorilla Monsoon and Mean Gene, and they introduce Kathy Lee Crosby as their guest color commentator, and she gets booed out of the building
Yeah.
pretty much immediately.
Okerlund got a nice pop because that's kind of his home area. When he was working with the AWA, they would go into Chicago with the WWA sometimes and another group, but that was Okerlund's home territory.
Now, I was kind of surprised that they didn't have the Piper T main event headline this one, since Mr. T's from Chicago. But maybe they thought that it might cause like a legit riot if fans got upset. I mean, you never know.
And you know what? Now that you mention that Rosemont Horizon crowd, one thing I noticed right away, they were hot.
Yeah.
And I know there's like some acoustics. It's like a wooden building, so the acoustics are better in it. But that crowd was hot. And I got a comment after the last match about that. But that crowd was ready to go, man.
Yeah, you're right. So we pretty much go right into it. We get match number 5, which is what they call Ladies Championship at the time. Velvet McIntyre versus Fabulous Moolah. Ends really quickly. Velvet McIntyre goes for a move off the top rope, has a wardrobe malfunction. I don't know if that had anything to do with the quick pin, but then Moolah rolls over on top of her and pins her within I didn't time it, but
1 minute and 25 seconds.
Yeah, very fast.
I didn't time it. I looked it up.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if it had something to do with the wardrobe malfunction or not, but it kind of looked like it.
that was for being a minute 25. It was good. Like Moolah came out firing. It was like she was throwing some like stiff like the chops this way in there.
Yeah.
Against McIntyre.
Yeah.
It was a hot crowd.
Right.
But it was a minute 25, and I'm glad it was only a minute 25. But man, those hair mares, like the snap mare where they, the women, they wrap their hair around and give them the snap mare. Those were awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a bad match for what it was, but I got to think that had something to do with the quick ending of it.
Yeah, maybe.
Either that or they knew they were pressed for time and were just like.
That's what I thought. Like watching it, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that could be. So not much there. Then we go right into match number 6 after that, which is the flag match between Nikolai Volkov and Corporal Kirshner. We actually get some blood in here.
Yes.
Corporal Kirshner gets split open. It did not look like Hardway, but what do you think about that? I mean, because Volkov was going after his head. He was biting him.
Yeah.
Normally Volkov didn't do stuff like that. Throws him into the pose.
That was a great post shot. Like that looked, the way they had the camera and the way Corporal Kirshner went into, I mean, just the way Volkov, like everything that looked when he hit, because I couldn't remember if he bled or not. Mm-hmm. Hell, I could barely remember that card. Well, and then when he hit, and I'm like, oh man, he's going, that's a great post shot. I hope he bleeds. I'm like, he probably won't. And then he had the little like Great Wojo trickle coming down. So that was good for me.
Yeah. It was what it was. Eventually, Blassie tries to throw the cane into Volkov. Kirshner intercepts it, whacks Volkov with the cane, and gets the pin, and gets to carry the American flag out of the arena.
Crowd was hot for that one.
The crowd was hot. I mean, let's face it, Kirshner came in hot. I mean, I don't think he was really a suitable replacement for Sergeant Slaughter, but they did all those vignettes introducing him, and before the crowd really caught on that he really was not the best wrestler, best worker, he was popular just because of his gimmick.
Yeah, and that was really, like, to me, that was the best finish that has been set up in the whole card so far.
I
And
think
even,
so.
Well, yeah, I mean, even the match was 2 minutes and 5 seconds. It was short. They had but the crowd got the cheer. It
Yeah,
was like
they did.
it was like a good like wrestling pop.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to figure out what was going on or anything. It was just like they
Right.
they let them see it coming. They let them have their pop. Cool.
Right. Yeah, and it's very evident watching WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 2 so far that this was the era that not every little thing was scripted.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they were still calling a lot of it in the ring. I'm sure they had it planned out, for the most part what they were going to do, but still, but still you could tell.
One thing I noticed as well, and you're right, like the matches look a lot better. I like the look when they're not so scripted because they look more real. Like if somebody screws up a little bit, yeah, that's cool, because they just generally matches look better to me anyway.
Right.
There was at the end of the match after Corporal Kirshner won, who was the lady that was the color commentator?
Kathy Lee Crosby.
Yeah, three females doing the color commentating for WrestleMania 2. So, she has a good quote that Kirshner, he's bleeding from the forehead as well, and he still won.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. She did okay.
She did a lot better.
She
than
did
the
better
other
than
one.
Susan St. James, that's for sure.
Yeah. I didn't like him. I didn't like her anyway. So, but it was funny.
All right, then we go to match number 7, which was technically the main event, even though it was not the last match. And that is the 20-man battle royal that featured NFL players and professional wrestlers. Lots of wrestling talent in the ring, former champions. I'm not going to go through everybody that was in it, but it comes down. I mean, and it's hard to review a battle royal.
Yeah, especially this one.
So eventually it comes down to the Hart Foundation and Andre the Giant. Andre throws Anvil out, and then Brett goes up top, tries to do something. Andre grabs him and chucks him on top of Anvil outside of the ring, giving Andre the victory.
Couple notes I took on this one. Ernie Ladd, the big cat. Ernie Ladd came in to commentate. We probably should have mentioned him on our Black History Month, but we ran out of time. Ernie Ladd, former NFL player, one of the greats, came in to do the commentary. That was cool.
I should mention the celebrities that were involved in this one too. Surprisingly, since they had Burger King, they had the competitors' face of their commercials at the time, Claire Peller, the Where's the Beef lady.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, she didn't either. She was like she had no, I don't even know if she knew where she was, but at one point they were like, she just started yelling, "Where's the beef? Where's the beef? Where's the beef?" And then you could barely hear it, but whatever. Then you had Dick Butkus as a referee and Ed Too Tall Jones as a referee as well.
Also, Bruno Sammartino was in this battle royal. And the one thing I noticed with Bruno as well is Pedro Morales, some of the all-time greats in the WWF. They really got lukewarm receptions coming into Chicago, Rosemont Horizon.
Yeah, they
or
did.
Rosemont, Illinois.
They did. I mean, Bruno got okay pop,
was
but
like
it's not like if he would have been in New York.
And the thing was, because I mentioned Okerlund, that being his territory, that was AWA territory. So Pedro Morales, Bruno, kind of like when they went to other areas of the country for the most part, it was just like a lukewarm, polite reception.
Yeah, I'll agree. I mean, obviously William the Refrigerator Perry's in it. He gets a huge pop.
Yeah. Dick Butkus, one of the
yeah,
officials.
A lot of the football guys got pretty big pops too. But so then we move on to match number 8, the tag team title match between Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine with Johnny Valiant versus the British Bulldogs with Ozzy Osbourne and Captain Lou Albano. Good match. I really like this match. Kind of ended in an odd way, I thought, where Valentine just got kind of rammed into Dynamite Kid's head on the outside, which gives the Bulldogs the win and the tag team titles.
I thought that could have been the best match so far, but the finish. Remember earlier
Yeah.
I was talking about the crowd being hot?
Yeah.
You know, and I said I'll come back to it later. It was this match.
Okay.
Where,
yeah.
I mean, like you said, the end was just so odd. It didn't give the fans a chance to like pop. You know,
Yeah, it was
it's
just-
like they were trying to figure out what happened, so
Right.
you didn't get that big whoosh. You know, that the crowd like comes out of their seat because everybody loved the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
They wanted them to win the belts. Hell, I did. Everybody did.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah, it
just
was-
kind of they did, and it was cool, but it was like,
Right. It was just sort of like out of the blue, but a good match.
Yeah,
Really good match
right.
up until that point. And you're right, it was probably the best match. It might have been the best match on the card, honestly. I'll see, but but in my head right now, I'm thinking it might be.
yeah, could be. But yeah, I had that finish went over, and I felt bad for that crowd because I saw how jacked they were, and beside the Kirshner deal, and that was like a mid-level match. You know, they're not supposed to pee their pants from the finish.
Yeah.
But this was their main event, and then it just
Yeah. You know, and there's absolutely no reason why the Bulldogs couldn't have given one of their signature finishers
Right, or
to win
something-
the belts.
yeah, it didn't even have
I
to
mean,
be
really.
It just something where you can see it coming, and like when you roll, you know, that somebody gets rolled up, everybody comes out of their seat for the pin.
Right.
And it's like they did the crash in the Bulldog's head. I know I'm explaining it horrible, but it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, he pinned him.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, you're
know?
right. Exactly.
But good match.
Yeah. So then we go back to Vince and Susan St. James in New York. They send it to LA.
Do we really have to listen to her again?
just for a short time. They send it to LA, where we have Jesse the Body Ventura and Lord Alfred Hayes,
Nice.
and they introduce their celebrity guest color commentator, who was Elvira, and who definitely did the best job
Yeah.
out of the three female color commentators.
Absolutely.
She threw some like great lines out there.
Yeah. And she kind of, she did do the best.
Yeah, I think she got it. If nothing else, she got her character, that she was supposed to be kind of like a flirty type.
Oh yeah, she did. I wrote a couple of those lines down that would never go over today.
One thing that I thought was, well, I'll wait until we get to the match, but well, we might as well just get right to it. I was kind of surprised to see Lee Marshall as the ring announcer.
What a treat
for some
that
reason.
was.
It
Me
was.
too.
And he recently passed away I think he passed away last year too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Voice of Tony the Tiger later on.
Hey, we
but-
didn't mention the guy in Chicago, Chet Copcock. He did a great job too. He's like a media guy.
Yeah, he did a good job too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they all did, but
Yeah, and Howard Finkel in New York.
right. So we get match number 9, Hercules Hernandez versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Steamboat ends up winning with the flying body press, but at one point, Ventura mentioned Steamboat has like a bandana around his leg.
Yeah.
Ventura mentions that, and Elvira says that. What did she say? That he looks like a wimp or something?
I can't remember
she
that.
said something like he looks like a wimp.
I didn't
because-
catch it.
So then I'm thinking, okay, well, they probably told her to root for the heels and like go against the good guys, but that wasn't necessarily the case later on. But anyway, you know,
The other lady kept dogging the referees. The first one, making the referees look bad.
Oh, yeah,
pretty
that's
much
right.
the whole.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Putting all the heat on the refs.
yeah.
Not a good idea.
But I mean, this is a decent match.
Yeah, it is a good, solid undercard match. Getting Steamboat ready.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, Hercules, a guy that probably doesn't get a whole lot of credit, but you know, he had a decent career. Never won any titles in there, I don't
Right.
think, but had a decent career in there.
Yeah.
You know, always really had good matches. Always was in great shape. You know, towards the end of the career, he did the tag team with Paul Roma, which I actually thought was a
Power
good
and
tag
Glory.
team.
Is
Power
that
and
what it
Glory,
was? Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, like I said, Steamboat wins with the flying body press. You know, decent match,
Yeah.
but
7 minutes,
That's pretty much
27 seconds.
yeah.
Yeah, the Hercules, just another guy, you know, really good at what he does, because there were a ton of people like that at the time. You know, that
True.
you just can't possibly give the right amount of credit, you know, to all these guys. You know,
Right.
it's hard because they were so good.
Yeah, I remember at the time thinking that was another one that was more of a squash. I know it had went a decent length, but it really wasn't. I mean, it made sense, but back then, anytime anybody beat anybody with their finisher, I kind of considered it a squash. Not I don't nowadays, but back then,
I see what you're saying.
You know,
I did too, kind of,
because I was like, I just remember kind of thinking it was back then, but it really wasn't because, I think Hercules went for like a splash. Steamboat put his knees up, and then that set up the flying body press. But it was a good back and forth anyway up until that point. That takes us to match number 10, which is the adorable Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart against Uncle Elmer.
Plowboy Frazier.
Now, this one I definitely had in my mind, and I think the reason why was because I think on the VHS copy, they cut out a couple minutes of it. So I think on the VHS copy that I used to rent, or no, it was the HBO, because they used to show this on HBO.
Really?
They cut it down to like 2.5 hours. So I think a lot of the matches were clipped. So in my mind, Adrian Adonis destroyed him in like 30 seconds. But actually, this is another one that Uncle Elmer got a hell of a lot more offense than I remember.
Yeah.
He kind of threw Adrian around. Adrian was bumping around like a pinball. And let's talk about how great Adrian Adonis is or was. And another guy that probably doesn't get credit because he passed away in the late 80s.
87, 88 maybe?
I think it was probably 88.
A year after Brody, whatever
Was it?
year Brody passed.
So that
got
was
murdered.
probably, it was either 88 or 89.
Yeah.
Because, obviously he was at WrestleMania 3 in 87. But then I think he jumped to AWA not too long after that. And then I think he passed away not too long after that.
Yeah,
Got in
tremendous.
that car accident. But
Tremendous work.
But just for a big guy like that, bumping around like a freaking pinball.
Yeah.
And
Uncle
just
Elmer did a good job too.
He did too, yeah.
I mean,
at
he
that
looked-
point, I thought.
He went in there with some aggression, which normally you didn't see that from him.
Right.
And that's what you need as a big guy.
Yeah. So eventually Elmer goes for a leg drop, misses. Adonis goes up top, comes off with, I don't know what it was.
A splash.
Flying forearm or a splash. Or
Yeah.
I think Lord Alfred called it a headbutt, but either way, that's the end of that match.
And I'm
But
glad it
actually
was
not a
short.
bad match.
Yeah, I'm glad it was short though,
It wasn't as short as I thought, though. Like I said, it wasn't. I mean,
3 minutes
my
and
mind-
1 second.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was another one. Elmer kind of threw him around the whole time, and then Adonis seizes the opportunity on the missed move.
Did you watch it on the WWE network?
I did, yeah.
What was the deal with the music for Uncle Elmer? I thought he would come into Don't Go Messing with a Country Boy.
See, I was wondering the same thing.
And
because
then there
later,
was some other song they laced over over top of it.
I don't know, because you would think that they would own the rights to that.
Yeah.
I don't know,
maybe they didn't.
because later on, Junkyard Dog comes in to grab them kicks.
Yeah.
Actually, the next match.
Yeah, good segue.
So, well, actually, there's an interview before this with Lord Alfred Hayes and Hulk Hogan, just hyping up the match.
I love Lord Alfred Hayes.
So then that takes us to match number 11, the Funk Brothers with Jimmy Hart against Tito Santana and Junkyard Dog. And this was another good match that I did not remember being as good.
Me
And I
neither.
know we showed this at one point on the Jobber Hour because we interviewed Dory Funk Jr. on the Jobber Hour at one point. And we showed clips of this match, but you got a few shades of what Terry Funk later becomes with like a lot of the what comes to be known as hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
In this match, more so than any of the other matches.
Well, you
really.
got your first national look at it. I mean, he kind of been doing that stuff, like in Memphis.
Oh, well, they had
or-
been doing it, but I'm just saying, but Funk kind of gets known for that later on.
Yeah, that was in my head too. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I can see why he fit in ECW.
Yeah, totally. One thing that we should point out is the way that Dory Funk Jr. sold the drop kicks. those were like hilarious, but they were good. But and Dory Funk Jr. is still wrestling to this day.
Yeah.
I just saw that he was wrestling in Japan the other
How
day.
good were the Funks? Like Dory,
I know.
man.
I
I have so
know.
much more respect for him now, and he was Hoss Funk here.
Yeah,
Than, so much more respect now than when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
Unbelievable.
Me too.
The
Me too.
match, 11 minutes 42 seconds. I thought this was the best match of the night.
See, that's why I said that. I don't know. It's between this one
Yeah.
or the other tag team match with the Bulldogs winning the belts. But I think you might be right. I mean, Terry Funk, one of my all-time favorites. Even Junkyard Dog holding up his end.
He did. I mean, Dog was a good seller, you know. I mean, and he threw great
Right.
punches.
Yeah. So, you know, if nothing else, it's cool that the Funk Brothers got a quote WrestleMania moment.
Yeah.
But because they end up winning the match with a megaphone shot to JYD.
It was a good finish. You know, it was like smooth.
Yeah, totally.
And I think watching a lot of this, I watch so much of the Southern wrestling, even today, you know, and I just see some of the finishes there back at the time in the WWF, and that's kind of why I favored the Southern wrestling anyway. And this match was more like a Southern wrestling tag team match.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh, a couple of things I know. 11 minutes, 42 seconds for the time of the fall on that one. Elvira puts over the trunks falling off. There was some discussion about that during the match.
Yes, she did.
And she likes, and speaking of the Junkyard Dog and Tito Santana, she likes tall, dark, and handsome men, and sometimes likes tall, dark, or likes tall white guys, because Ventura took exception to that. So that was just some of the, you know, celebrity Hollywood commentary that got brought into the WrestleMania festivities. So.
Right. Yeah, she had a couple good lines in the main event too. But before we go to the main event, we get a video recap of the Hogan Bundy feud, which isn't a whole lot. Just kind of shows Morocco and Bundy injuring Hogan's ribs at Saturday night's main event. But then we get Hulk Hogan. Then we get Mean Gene with Hulk Hogan working out with Dr. Panovich, I think it is, and Hillbilly Jim, and they're just really selling that. By the way, Dr. Panovich recommended that Hulk Hogan not wrestle the match because of his injury, but he was still like lifting weights and doing stuff against doctor's orders.
Is that like the chiropractor, Dr. Panovich, that they had?
I don't know.
Because there was some guy
but...
they had that was just like, he wasn't really a doctor. He was like a chiropractor or something that they used a lot. And they would.
I don't know. Probably. I don't remember this guy, but
yeah, me neither.
But possibly. So then we get the intros for the celebrities in this match. We get Tommy Lasorda as the guest ring announcer, who does a pretty good job. Introduces Ricky Schroeder, who gets booed out of the building. And then we get Robert Conrad as the special, what was he, referee? I think he's a special guest referee.
Yeah.
Which leads us to, then we get interview with Jesse Ventura, with Bundy and Heenan. Then we go back to Vince and Susan St. James. And then finally, that takes us to the main event, the cage match number 12, Hulk Hogan, King Kong Bundy for the World Heavyweight title in the big blue cage.
Yeah.
The cage, the story goes, had to be reinforced in case Bundy wanted to make his way over the top of the cage. Ventura did have to explain that to Elvira at one point, that normally we use fencing, but this cage had to be built. If you listen to any of those guys, they hated working in the big blue cage.
Yeah. I didn't even want to watch it, honestly.
I kind of skipped through it.
But
I did remember, but I mean, it is what it is. I remember watching it a million times on HBO. Hogan has gone on record saying that whenever he would wrestle Bundy, you knew it. You could tell Bundy was laying in some shots.
Hogan was too. Did you hear some of those? Like some of the forearms going in?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was
definitely.
nice.
Yeah, I think so.
They were working MWA snug.
Yeah, and then also you get a Bundy blade job.
Yeah.
Thank God, in a cage match, as you always should in a cage match.
Not in the WWF most of the time.
No, not anymore. But and then that was another thing that Elvira threw out there. They were talking about something with the cage, and then Ventura's like, "Oh, is that where you keep your bats?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, something like that." like she had her own like dungeon or something.
I just hate that whole concept of the WWE WWF cage match. I know, like here locally in Detroit, like Big Time Wrestling, they kind of had the same deal where you had to get out of the cage to win it,
Yeah.
It flies in the face of what the cage match is for, and it just automatically sets a bad example because you can never get out of the cage right without making it look fake. Like people trying to get out of the cage early, they're always going slow, waiting for the other guy to catch up.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you just
and they're
go
always
run?
getting caught.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and it just I like the 3 count in the middle, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's something different, I guess. I mean, I agree with you that you kind of gotta like make it look like you're. Well, I mean, unfortunately, you have to not that you're purposely doing it, but it does make it look like you're kind of waiting for the guy to catch up with you a lot of times.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, but I
it's
don't
hard
know.
not
I
to.
don't.
That's why you know.
But okay, so anyway, you get a decent back and forth battle. King Kong Bundy obviously works on Hulk Hogan's injured ribs for most of the match. I can't remember. Did Bundy miss with a splash or something, and then you get Hogan giving him a power slam? So somehow that's what sets it up. Hogan gives him a power slam out of the corner, hits him with the leg drop, climbs over the top of the cage, and retains the world heavyweight.
Yeah, Hogan didn't Hulk up in this match. It
just kind of came out of the blue.
Well, yeah, because Bundy threw him into the corner and he did a splash, and then Hogan kind of made the face.
That's what it was. He didn't miss the splash. He actually got the splash, and that's what made Hogan Hulk up.
Yeah, and he didn't. He just kind of looked at him, and then Bundy threw him into the other corner, and then hit him with the splash again, and then Hogan stands there.
Right.
And then just goes after him, slam, walks out of the cage. Kind of anticlimactic. That's what I had written down.
Yeah, that's true. But whatever. The crowd liked it.
Yeah.
I just recently read something about King Kong Bundy and why he is not a possible reason why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He claims that Vince told him that after WrestleMania 2, he was going to beat Hogan for the belt at some point, and did not. He also claimed that Vince still owed him money from some other stuff, possibly WrestleMania 2. I don't know. But, probably not, because he came back years later and had another little run, which didn't amount to much. He is one of the Undertaker's WrestleMania victories.
Yeah. He's been back a few times, right? In gimmick battle royals or whatnot.
No, that was the thing. That's why I read about this, because Tommy Dreamer was trying to bring him in for the Randy Orton Legend Killer gimmick.
Yeah.
And Bundy left a message and was like, hey, Tommy, I love you. You and I have always done business. You're great. He's like, tell Vince that I will never appear on his program again until he pays me the money, and also to F off.
Huh. Wow.
So that's a possible reason why Bundy never got put into the Hall of Fame. Not saying that it couldn't happen eventually, but obviously
should.
King Kong Bundy passed away recently. But so overall, what rating would you give WrestleMania 2? 1 out of 10.
Rating. Before I go there, can I make one other observation about that main event?
Quickly.
But
we're pressed for time, so
okay. They had the ONTV up above NWA angle, the camera angle from above, and when Bundy missed a splash, it looked awesome.
Looked awesome. Yes,
yeah.
I caught that too. That did look awesome. I was like, man, that's the best splash that I've ever seen Bundy do.
Right.
But it probably had to do a lot with that angle.
Yeah.
But,
so my rating I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Probably halfway, because a lot of matches were short. So
yeah.
I'll give it
was
a 5.
actually better than what I remembered. So I'm going to give it a 6, but definitely very experimental, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Obviously the early days of WrestleMania. So anyway, we have the next WrestleMania coming up soon. I think it's WrestleMania 35. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know what they're on.
Eventually we will talk about WrestleMania 3 that we were both at. Thank you for your expert analysis, Brace Beemer.
Thank you.
Keep checking the Butch Blood page for the next Wrestling Tonight show. And hopefully we will see everyone next week with a new topic. Take care, everyone.
Deep in the African jungle, behind the giant wall, there lives a huge gorilla, the most monstrous monster of all. His name is Kong, and they call him King. You can tell why at a glance.